Hey there, and welcome to part 3 of this Learn Pro tutorial featuring Glenn, also known as DJ Dolo. This is going to be a really cool section. We're going to be getting rid of a lot of our distracting factors, and then we're going to be doing some great work with coloring and lighting and everything like that in the photo. We've got quite a bit to do, and this section will probably be about an hour long, but you know, if I'm very diligent, it might be faster. I don't know. All right, let's get into it. So we've got our plan here. Remember, we created this in the first section. We're talking about some of the things we're going to get rid of and then some like the overall things. Well, let's just go ahead and work on that. So I'm going to create a new layer and group that together by hitting Command G, and we'll just call this clean. You can clean some of these things up. These are like things like the signs and the little dots and all kinds of. We got rid of a billboard and a light bulb or a street light. See, we already did those. Taking care of lightning and darkening and things like that. Lightning and darkening we'll take care of in the second part of our plan. But let's go ahead and take care of some of these distractions, and then we're going to finish this up with taking care of the license plate, which is actually hard to do. So it'll be a good learning experience for you. And I might turn this on, from time to time just to kind of see what we've got going on. All right, let's go ahead and start off with things like this shop. Okay, so we're going to be using things like our clone stamp tool, healing brush tool, our brush tool, and other methods for this. And a lot of this stuff is going to be in the background, relatively out of focus. So in that case, you don't have to be as precise. So I'm using the clone stamp tool here to get rid of our little logo there. It's just kind of, I thought it was just a little distracting. I don't mind that it says shop right there, but I'm just getting rid of this. I'm just clone stamping from down, up, and then up, down. Generally, because this color is different from that color, you just want to make sure you don't clone stamp, here and then just do that, because obviously it won't look right. So, try to do like a decent job blending these things together, and then when you're done, just choose like a large soft edge brush and then just kind of like blend them all back together. There we go, just like that. Cool. And we can choose to leave either, this one or two or not. But you can see there it looks basically like it, now it looks like there was no shop thing there. All right. Cool. And if we do want to get rid of that shop, you could do that as well. Let's go ahead and take care of, I believe this little flare right there was one of the things we're going to take care of. So we're going to zoom in and just clone stamp from here down in this way. And kind of come across like that. All right, and we're just going to sample that and paint in there. Just like that. All right. Oh, I was on my brush tool this whole time. I meant to be on my clone stamp tool. Sorry. I was like, why is this working so well, but not giving me the detail? It's because I was using my brush tool. There we go. Let's make sure we're using the right tool for the job. Clone stamp tool. It's going to make sure you get all this like nice little detail and things like that. And there for the hood of our car, I'm going to grab my marquee tool, M for the marquee tool, and we're just going to make like a large selection like this. Right click on there and go to transform selection. I'm just going to rotate this around. You could use something like a pen tool if you wanted to do that. Really not really a right or wrong way to do this. I'm just going to use a marquee tool because most people are pretty comfortable with that. So we're making a selection around there, and then I'm just going to select, inside here and then clone stamp out to the edge. So we'll hit Command H to kind of hide that selection. There we can see, it's just going to give us a nice clean edge. We don't really have to worry about being precise because that selection is kind of doing that for us. Okay, so we can zoom out and see, got rid of our little spot there, which is nice. Great. Let's go ahead and take care of some of the other things. Clone stamp tool. Just make sure you take care of, like the whole thing. So there I'll want to make sure that I do want to just make sure that, I take care of the whole area that, you don't want to like stop. Like you wouldn't want to do something like that. Like that's never going to look good. So especially with a light source or something, like either take it out completely or just leave it in completely. But anything like in the middle, like that is not going to look good ever. So you want to make sure to take it out completely, and then it's going to wind up looking good. All right, And for something like this, you might not be able to use the clone stamp tool for that because you might not have enough detail. So I would switch to my brush tool and then hold Alt or Option and sample a color there and just kind of paint that inside there. All right, there we go. And we'll zoom back out. And if you do it well, you really shouldn't be able to tell that this was done with a brush tool at all. That's the goal, anyway, is for it to not be able to, you know, not be able to tell. It should just look like it's, you know, was like that. All right, very nice. Now with the brush tool, you're definitely not going to be getting, you know, things like grain in there. So if you want to build back the grain, you can do that as well. On a detail like that small, like this is, you know, I really wouldn't worry about it there. But if you were you know, working with an area that was a little bit larger, you might think about it there. All right, and I'm going to show you how to do that when we get to the license plate. I'm going to use a clone stamp, or sorry, healing brush tool with areas like that. Let's just take care of that little street light there. Let's get rid of the whole thing, just like we said earlier. Okay, and I'm just using my clone stamp tool here. All right, I'm not really too concerned about the detail of this guy back there. I want to draw less attention to that car anyway. All right, and we're just going to delete out this whole guy right there. Cool. Let's see what else we've got. This little thing in the window. So this is, you know, that plan we made earlier is just kind of like helping me out at this point. I can see like, oh, these are the things that I identified as, you know, catching my eye. Let's make sure that I don't miss any of those. All right, so we can turn this off. So shop, we did that. Take care of this one now. Okay. Let's see. We've got the wheel back there, which we're going to take care of. All these little areas. Let's take care of these first. And again, this is just using the healing brush tool or the clone stamp tool. So this is a good area for the healing brush tool because they're kind of like, they're not touching any borders. These areas are not. So they're, if you have something like that's touching a border, like, you know, this is what I would consider a border, or this, that would be a good job for the clone stamp tool. But if something is just like in the middle of a surface, like this is just kind of in the middle of this surface here, close to the edge, but it's not exactly at the edge, you can use a healing brush tool. The problem is if you get too close, that's what you get when you start to use the healing brush, when you get too close to an edge. All right, so if you can't do it, like if you need to get right up to the edge, that's when you want to use the clone stamp tool, because the clone stamp tool won't try to blend anything, so it's not going to mess up your edge work. All right, but other than that, I would recommend using the healing brush tool, because it usually does a little bit better of a job blending things in. All right, so let's just turn that off and on and see. These are the small changes we've made. And, you know, ideally, if you had the time, you'd go through and do this, you know, you'd spend maybe 20 minutes on this. You know, if it was going to be like a portfolio piece, I would spend maybe 20 minutes going through and getting rid of just small little details, even stuff like that. I mean, it's not going to be as true to the car, but do I need that little thing to be there? No, not really. So that's what I would do. All right, things like this back tire or this wheel back here. Some of these things, like I don't want to get. It's going to be hard to completely get rid of this, but if I grab my brush tool and just kind of like paint that dark right over there, I'm not losing all the detail, but I'm losing enough detail in there. Let's just like paint this in, grab this dark color, kind of paint this down. I'm losing enough detail to where like I don't really know what that is back there. The only reason I care is because it was distracting, right? It was like drawing my eye back there. Now it's not doing that. So, you know, we basically accomplished that goal. Now it doesn't look great, but if you wanted to do like the quick version, that's what I would do. The slightly longer version would be like grab a clone stamp tool, like, paint this in to make it look like the street was actually continued to go, and then grab the clone stamp tool up there and, kind of paint down in there. It's all, background details. So it's like, who are you to say if this is how it looked or not? Like, it's not really going to be able to tell that, right? All right. Now we'll just put a layer mask on that group there because we did that in 2 different layers. And then, paint black on the layer mask so we get like the nice shine of the bumper and things like that. Cool. So, getting rid of that was pretty easy. So this was like the, the really quick way that would work probably for most things, and then using the clone stamp tool. It's a better way to do it. It's just a little bit more difficult, but in this case, actually, it wasn't that hard. Sometimes it is quite a bit harder to do that. All right. Let's go in here and look at getting rid of this thing, which you can do again with your clone stamp tool. Just clone stamp all the way up to the top there. There we go. And I am using a Wacom tablet, which makes these things quite a bit easier, really. Doing that with a brush, with a mouse would be relatively difficult, but with a Wacom tablet, painting up to a certain line is relatively easy. If you are using a mouse, I would recommend, early like we did with the hood, like right up here, using selection tools and selecting things out in that way. When you're using a pen, you can be a lot more like free form with things. This is like using a regular pen, instead of mouse. All right, so I won't tend to select things out as much. Like here, I can pretty much draw the outline of that shoe pretty well. I mean, not incredibly well, but if I wanted to, grab my brush tool and I wanted to paint red, like I could pretty much, paint red right around there. I'm just using my brush tool. Like if I wanted to paint in a highlight, paint it up on that shoe a little bit more. Maybe it's a little bit bigger there. So like, when using a cursor like this, like a tablet like this, you can get pretty precise with it. It's not that difficult to do. In fact, I'll leave that in there just to prove my point. I just painted that on there. So if I'm removing a piece of trash like that, I'm not really concerned with making a selection. I'll just select right up here and, paint right down there. I'll stop here at the edge of there and I'll stop at that edge. So you can be relatively precise with these tablets. There we go. Precise enough to paint on some red on a shoe. Why not? Do whatever you want. That's why I wind up using the brush tool quite a bit, and I wind up using the brush tool quite a bit more than I really wind up using the clone stamp tool. And the reason is because eventually you're just going to get good enough with a brush tool to make it worth painting most things with the brush tool. All right, that's looking pretty good. Let's see about some of our other things. So we looked at some of these little marks there. Let's just see, that would be a pretty good example for the healing brush tool. So we'll sample over there and just paint that in. It'll blend it in really nicely. There we go. That should be the healing brush tool as well. Bonk. Cool. Nice and easy. All right, we're gonna bring that down in brightness. We took care of that. The billboard. Yep, we took care of that. The light up there. Yeah, just about the only thing we have to do now as far as cleaning things up is take care of this license plate, which is going to be a little bit more difficult. Then we'll take care of this. I'm not going to clone stamp out this the sidewalk. We're going to make it darker and it's going to draw less attention to it. So the point of these things is to, for them not to distract. So let's just turn this off and on. So these are some of the things that just kind of little dots and things like that in the image that's like, I'm fine with them not being there, and they kind of clean things up a little bit. So it's a preference. If you want to get rid of those things in your photos, now you know how. If you don't, then don't. It's totally up to you. Whatever it is that you guys want to do. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get rid of this license plate here. To do that, I'm going to use the pen tool real quick, and we're just going to make like an interesting little selection here. So I'm going to hit P for the pen tool. And basically, I don't know what this bumper looks like underneath this license plate. So what I did is a quick Google search for a 1972 Cutlass, and I found one without, without this license plate here. There's an interesting like little triangle detail under there. So Google is pretty cool. Shows you whatever you want to see, pretty much. So what I'm going to do is basically I'm going to hand paint this now. And then you guys can follow along, and you'll see it's really not as hard as you would think. So I'm going to use my pen tool, and we're going to go ahead, and if you guys have any questions about using the pen tool, just type in, above every episode there's a tags button on Florin.com. Just click on that tags and then go down to pen tool. You'll find a bunch of episodes with pen tool, or just use the search box in the top right corner of Florin.com and type in pen tool. A lot of episodes on that. But basically I'm just going to click here and drag up, and click and drag out in that way. And there we go. And my goal here is to kind of like create something that, maybe it looks like it's, we've got a little bit of perspective going on. There we go. So, maybe it's like, that's where it's kind of the like corner. Like if this came to a point, that would be right there. All right. It doesn't have to be perfect, but, just something a little bit more than just flat. And if it winds up looking wrong, like, you can totally change it. So I'm going to right click and say make selection here, and feather by 0.7 looks pretty good. That's just going to give the edge a little bit of feathering, make it a little softer, which is going to help blend everything in. Okay, now here in the selection, I'm going to Command H, and I'm going to select here on the outside, and we're just going to paint this in, from the outside in. There we go. Cool. So that's getting rid of, part of our license plate there. Cool. And that looks pretty good. So next we're going to take care of this part, the upper part, which is quite a bit harder. So what we're going to do is go to select, and I'm going to go down to inverse. So now, instead of it selecting inside of this, it's going to select everything that's outside of it. We'll create a new layer, and just as a test, I'll just grab a color to see, like, okay, yeah, that's right. So what we're doing now is I need to paint this area. So I created this selection because now I don't have to be careful about what I do. I can just use this as a border. So I'm going to hit Command H and basically just grab my brush tool. We're going to start off by creating like kind of a blank canvas here. We're just going to get rid of the license plate. At this point, I'm not incredibly worried about sculpting or anything like that or making it look good. I'm literally just trying to get rid of the license plate. There we go. There's a little hole here. Cool. And that looks pretty good, and we can shape that how we want to. I'm just trying to use like the cues and things like that from what this looked like before, like blending it in from the left and the right and the top and the bottom and things like that. All right. And this is all with a brush tool. I'm just holding Alt or Option to grab colors. So it's just kind of painting around. I'm not a professional painter. I'm like it just shows you like I suck at painting. I really do. But this is not that hard to do. So even if you want to take care of an area like that, this is it's about how you do it. All right. Well, let's just say we want we decided that looks cool. Why not? Let's grab the bottom side of this hole there. That should have like some of this color there, right? So let's grab that and kind of paint this in. The right side should have some of that. Just kind of like using like, okay, well, this thing looks like that. Maybe this one down here would look like that too. All right. Maybe it's a little bit lighter down there. Cool. That looks pretty good there. It's supposed to be, you know, relatively dark inside of there, so I'm painting that inside of there. Maybe there's something like that. Paint it a bit darker, a bit lighter along the lip here. It's got some curvature, so it's going to reflect some metal. It's going to reflect some light, rather, not some metal. All right, and grab that light color there, and then grab a slightly darker color there to give it like a little bit of a lip. Cool. And again, all this is just with the brush tool here. All right, pretty cool. Now let's grab this color and make sure we got some, you know, nice little lip going on there. Maybe something darker there. I don't know how this shape looks, but so is this 100% true to what it would actually look like? Probably not. You know, but we'll just zoom out to there and we'll see, like, you know, does that bother us? No, I think it looks, you know, pretty good. Looks like it's, you know, it's actually, you know, would be what it would look like. All right. I think in reality there's like a little weird triangle or something that's down there, but personally I don't really like that design decision anyway, so I'm kind of changing that. If there are any Cutlass owners out there, you can't change that. You can't. God, Aaron, I hate you. But I'm going to wager a guess there are not a whole lot of Cutlass owners watching this tutorial. And if there are, I apologize. I do respect the Cutlass. There we go. Cool. So zoomed out to, like, you know, the you know, you wouldn't, I mean, when people are looking at your image, let's be realistic. They look at an image for like, I don't know, 3 seconds, and they're like, oh, that's cool, next. Like, there's not, like, anyone who's going to be like, oh, let's just zoom in here to 100% and navigate, and, oh God, what is this? The amount of people who would do that is very small, and you can kind of just not really worry about that anyway. All right, cool. So we just, you know, basically hand painted that, which is a lot of fun. All right, let's make this just a little bit softer of an edge. I'm going to deselect and then paint that edge in just a little bit softer. Okay, now you will notice there's no like grain. So you can see a slight grain structure here, you know, where the photo is. You can see it especially well here. There's no grain when you just paint something, you know, by hand. So what you can do is you can make a new layer. Okay, let's just select this area out here. I'm going to hit Shift Delete and fill this with 50% gray right over here. We're going to go to Filter, down to Noise, and I'm going to go to Add Noise. There we go. Looks pretty good. Now I'm going to hit Option Command G, because remember that's the keyboard shortcut for clipping. So we're going to clip this noise just to where I painted. Okay, I'm going to change this to Soft Light now. I'm going to hit Command U, which is we're going to bring up our hue saturation. We'll bring our saturation down. Okay, and then I'm going to change my opacity to 20 by hitting V and then number 2 on my keyboard. We're going to hit number 1. We're going to hit 1.5 and it'll be 15. So that's going to add that grain back to wherever I painted by hand. So we've got that little bit of a grain structure, and that's just going to help everything kind of blend together and make it look a little bit more real. So that's that. And if you wanted to completely just redesign this car, you could do that too. Just paint it. Why not? You are the master. All right, so cleaning things up, and or you just leave the license plate. Like, you know, if you don't want to do all that, just heck, leave the license plate. It doesn't matter to me. You know, I'm just offering suggestions on things you can do with this. Great. Well, I do think we're looking really good so far. Let's go ahead and take care of, you know, this little guy down here was kind of bothering me, so we're going to use a healing brush tool. Let's take care of that. All right, and let's just make sure that's visible. So just making sure we took care of all the little areas that we wanted to, and we did. So let's go ahead and take care of the curb, and then we can work on some lightness and darkness, and then we can bring into this stuff, building out our head beams and things like that, or high beams. All right. Pretty cool though, huh? Just getting rid of some of those things, cleaning up the image just a little bit. All right. Oh, let's go ahead and create a new layer and group this, and we'll just call this, I don't know, exposure. So we're going to change the exposure of these things a little bit. All right, so we're going to start off with this curb. Basically, I'm just going to create a levels adjustment layer. I'm going to bring my white point down quite a bit. There we go. And then bring our backs up, just like that. Okay. I'm going to hit Command I on that. And then all I have to do is grab my brush tool and paint white right here. And I just want to end, pretty much right at the end of our curve. All right, and the goal is here is, to do something subtle enough to make it look like it's, actually, like that would, actually be that color. There we go. And how are we looking there? Maybe we could come up a little bit lighter. The other thing is, if it was that dark, it wouldn't be that color. Like, it would come down in saturation a little bit, right? So what we're going to do is go to Hue Saturation, and I'm going to bring that down a little bit. I'm going to hit Option Command G, and that's going to clip this to this layer mask that we just created here, which is pretty cool. So lowering in saturation. As things go into shadow, this is just a general rule of how light works. Properly exposed things are well saturated. Things that are in shadow, they lower in saturation, and they also lower in contrast. So that's, like this is going to be more saturated. Let's just create a new layer. Like this is in highlight, right? So more saturated, and here we have less saturated. It's not only darker, there's less blue in it. Even over here, you can see like that's kind of looking gray right over there compared to this. And it's the same car, same paint job, right? So as things go into shadow, less saturated. Cool. So now we get a curb that has more appeal. Get it? Haha, curb appeal. Okay. Let's grab a hue saturation. I'm gonna hit this colorize button too, and I'm gonna give this a little bit of this like nice blue that we've got. There we go. Just to change that a little bit, and we'll lower the opacity quite a bit. This is just gonna help it blend in just a little bit more. Cool. So we can see I didn't worry about clone stamping the tool, the curb out or anything like that, because we really didn't need to. Just like doing that, now we don't look at it. So that's the whole point. If you do have any area that needs, like here on the edge work just a little bit, what I would recommend doing is just taking a brush tool and then grabbing a color there and then painting it in. Like if we did have any areas that, some overspill from our layer mask where it may have made the curb, the street a little bit too dark, just grab your brush tool and you can kind of paint that in like that. There we go. That'll kind of help out there. Or you could use a clone stamp tool, and same principle there. Clone stamp tool, just paint it in all the way to the edge there. Just don't paint his shoe in. All right. Pretty cool. All right, so that's our goal accomplished. We're just not looking at that curb, and you can see, oftentimes it's hard to tell, if something should be done until you see the before or after, but here's the before, and it's like, obviously we're looking at that curve, like it's my eyes going right to it. And the after, it's like, oh, cool, now I'm not looking at it. So, sometimes it can be hard to see, like, should I do this, should I not do that? But once you take care of something, like you get rid of it, like we just did there, then you can usually see pretty quickly, like, oh, yep, that needs to happen, because it's kind of drawing my eye before. All right, great. Let's go ahead and group all those things inside my exposure group, and we'll just call this curb. Okay, I'm going to create a new layer, and we'll group this, and we'll call this undercar. Okay, I'm going to change this color because it doesn't fit anywhere. There was another car behind this one, just the headlight, and that's what's color in there. But I just want to grab my curves adjustment. You can see it's like, it's got some green and some blue in there, right? So we're going to pull a little bit less green out of there. Okay, we'll put a little bit less blue out of there as well. I'm going to hit Command I and then paint on my layer mask. Alright, and let's just go to our red channel and pull some of the red back in there as well. Alright, here in our green channel. Cool. And I'm just using my layer mask to kind of just paint this in. And it's going to help like balance it out just a little bit more. Alright. Now if you're not as good with curves, like that's pretty close. It's not there exactly. If you're not as good with curves, but you know like the color you'd like it to be, like let's say you want that color, you try a new layer, grab this color here, and then try paint right over there. Change your blending mode from normal down here to color is like the extreme example, or if you want to do more accurately, try hue, and that's just going to change the hue. And you can do them in combination if you want to do that as well. So I would recommend doing curves if you needed to like build something in, like, you know, this is a little too red now down there. Paint that in, change this back to hue. There we go. Let's change it down to color. Color is going to take into account saturation. Hue will not. Okay, just something good to think about. Not that you spend your time thinking about hue. I do though, so. That way I get to teach you. All right, cool. So taking care of that, you know, color that was just a little bit off from underneath the car. All right, let's take a look at this. Let's see, we need to brighten this area up, definitely. We darkened that area. I'm gonna darken the car up as well, lighten that wheel. So we need to lighten the wheel up and we need to lighten him up. Let's take care of the wheel. All right, we'll grab a curves adjustment layer, hit Command G, group that with itself. Okay, and I'm just gonna click and drag this up a little bit in brightness. Command I, and then we wanna grab a marquee tool, just like that, and hit Command I there. It's gonna brighten that up. I do wanna add a blur to that, or else it's gonna look really weird. Okay, so let's just be sure to go to Filter, Blur, and then here to Gaussian Blur. Alright, and right about there we're looking pretty good. So we've lightened the wheel. Now, when you do something like lighten a wheel, it's got to look relatively natural. Let's just bring that down just a little bit. Like, you can't have just a bright wheel and then this area dark, right? Like, that wouldn't make sense. So this area has to get lighter as well to match the brightness of the wheel. Because then it would kind of look like this is a light source almost. So if this area is brighter, this area's got to get brighter too. So let's just create a curves adjustment layer, group that with itself, and I'll call this. All right. Now I'm creating adjustment layers and things like that and grouping them because some of these things have multiple layers within each group. I prefer to do that as opposed to naming each of my layers, but you can do whatever you want. Let's hit Command I on that layer mask. It's going to make it all completely black. And then I'm just going to paint white here on this layer mask here. And this is just going to make our subject stand out a little bit brighter as well. There we go. That's looking pretty good. Almost like we had a little bit of fill light right there. Okay. Cool. So let's look at the before and after. You know, here we're kind of looking down here. Now we're looking right back up towards our subject where we should be looking. Let's make our car a little bit darker in the background. I'll just put that in my subject group because it's just going to be a curves adjustment layer. All right, lowering that down, Command I on that layer mask. All right, and let's make sure to extend that a little bit so it's not just on the car. It'll help it look a little bit more natural. Alright, so a little bit less attention to that car back there, but it still doesn't look like, you know, heavy Photoshop or anything like that. It's just a little bit darker. Alright, cool. Technically you could use the similar clone stamp techniques as over here, but we got a lot of detail, especially it's like disappearing back in the horizon. There's quite a bit of detail that would need to be added back there. And it would just be pretty difficult to do. It would take a few hours to like get it to look exactly right, because you'd have to paint buildings and things like back there. So I think just like lessening the impact works pretty well. But that's when I edited this first image. I tried for about an hour to get rid of this car, and it was like still not looking great. So that's how I know. Okay, cool. So we've taken care of basically all those things. Let's just take a look at this. We've got some like light beams. We've definitely got a lot of our color to work with as well. Some sharpness and things like that. All right. Cool. So our exposure, we can see already, you know, this is like helping to look, you know, instead of like at these details, now we're definitely looking more at our subject, which is exactly what we want. All right. Looking great. Let's make a new layer, and then I'm gonna hit Command G. We'll just call this lights, and now we're gonna play around with actually how to work with these lights. You can do this in a number of ways. The first way I'm gonna try is I'm gonna create a curves adjustment layer, and I'm gonna pull my RGB up quite a bit. I'm gonna bring a little bit of red into there, and I'm gonna pull down the blues, and that's gonna give us like a nice like yellowy color. Might wind up being too much, but you can always change these values as you want. Okay, I'm gonna hit Command I on this, and then I'm gonna use my brush tool, and I'm gonna paint with a very hard edge brush, and paint white, just little things like this. Yeah, stuff like that. That's good. Just bring that up a little brighter. We can always change this. All right, so little dots just kind of everywhere. This might look pretty weird at this stage, because it kind of is. Alright, our little dots everywhere. Maybe we'll make some of these bigger. Okay, cool. Let's put more towards the center. Now what we're going to do, this is what my layer mask looks like, beautiful, is I'm going to go to Filter, we're going to go to Blur, and I'm going to go to a Radial Blur. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose my radial blur to be a zoom blur. I'll pull the amount in, and then we're going to choose our center right about there and hit OK. And it's just kind of like going to blur these out in a relatively, what I feel is relatively interesting way. Let's just try it again. Hit Command F, by the way, we'll just redo the same exact blur that you just did, or the same filter, whatever that filter might be. Okay, cool. And now I'm going to paint some, you know, some smaller guys with black. Basically what I'm looking for is variation here. And Command F again, which is just going to build those in. Okay, so we've got some nice variation here. So that's basically what I made. Pretty, huh? Actually, it's kind of cool, even up there. It's not at all realistic, but kind of cool. So we're going to use these as headlights now. So how do we actually do that? Well, to get it to be like shining, to get it to shine from the light beams itself, just move the center over there, and then hit Command T, and then you can just kind of like stretch these out, and you know, like bring them down and things like that. You know, and then you got yourself some like headlights. Cool, just like that. And then all you have to do is use your brush tool, and then paint black over here, you know, because you want these to kind of shine in one direction, not multiple directions. There we go. And, you know, you get something like that. Pretty cool. And the reason I like this, we might not leave it so visible, but the reason I think this is nice is because it actually has like definition. It's not just like a big blur of color. Like, you know, you can see like the beams of light, which I think is great. This is, sometimes it can be difficult to tell where these like start and end. So sometimes what you'll want to do is hold Alt or Option and click on your layer mask, and you can see like it's a pretty harsh line down there. So I want to just paint this black, you know, coming up from there. So we just don't want like a harsh line to be visible from our headlights, right? Because then it's like very, very obvious they were done in Photoshop. Even though this might be pretty obvious, you just don't want to like make it like so obvious, right? And put some back over there as well. Cool. So we, you know, like turn in on our headlights. All right, Alt or Option. Let's take a look at this layer mask. Let's just paint that black there as well. Okay, cool. Now you can always lower the opacity of these. You can change the color of them. Like if I don't want so much yellow in those, I just go to my blue channel and like pull up the yellows just a little bit. There we go. Because blue and yellow are opposite in the curves anyway. There we go. And I can always, you know, group these together, shift click the two of those, and I can just change the opacity of those in general. Like this is, you know, you're not stuck with that. You can always change these things too. So just, you know, have fun with that. That would be my main piece of advice. Just have fun. I'm going to create a new layer, and then we're just going to do these a little bit more simple now. I'm just going to create like a selection that looks like that. Okay. And I'm going to grab like a nice bright color using my brush tool. And I'm going to paint something like that. Let's change that to something like soft light. Cool, looking good. And now I'm going to put a blur on those. A nice Gaussian blur. Alright, and let's see about building these up. And then I can grab my little control point, bring it to there. And I can see like where these would shine. Right ahead. They can be short, they can be long, whatever you want. All right, so that's more like a, you know, just soft light. Hit Command J again, and then don't forget we got some light back over there. We need to account for that too, right? Cool. So that's, you know, turning your lights on and off. Some other little cool details let's throw in there. What I want to do is create a new layer. Shift Option Command N, and then Shift Option Command E is going to make us a stamp visible layer. Okay, now I'm going to go to Filter, or we're going to go to Render, and I'm going to go to Lens Flare. We're just going to render a lens flare, you know, right inside of there. Bring our brightness down there. We might do one in each. I don't know. Let's start with that one. Cool. And hit OK. There we go. Check that out, huh? Now, the problem with lens flares is they're like, you have to do them on stamp visible layers, you know, because you don't get any of that detail. But one thing you can do, which is very nice, is you can just fill this layer with black. Okay, so I'm going to hit Shift Delete, and I'm going to fill this with black. And then I'm going to hit Command F, which is the same as right over here, which is does the same filter you just did. Then we're going to change this from normal down to screen. So there we got a lens flare. Now it's on its own layer, and I can do things like lower the opacity of it. I can really do whatever I want. Add some blurs and whatever. I can add a layer mask to my lens flare. Pretty cool. Now, that's a bit of a workaround because in my opinion, Photoshop should just be able to do that on a blank layer, but it will not. So you have to do a workaround. So new layer, Shift Option Command E to make a stamp visible, filter, down here to render, and here to lens flare. And there we go. Let's put it right over there. Hit OK. Okay. Now we're going to hit Shift Delete, fill this with black, Shift F, sorry, Command F to redo the same filter. And then we're going to change this from normal down here to screen. And then I'm going to put a layer mask on this because I don't want those things up there to be visible. All right, and we'll make that about 60% visible. So it just kind of gives it a little bit more like kind of cool definition, like a slight little ring around there and that little guy there. You can't like super tell that it's there unless you look for it, but having it there, it's like it kind of helps out. Plus it gives us some of that red color, which is, you know, just like the flare from the light would be there. All right, and these guys can come down in opacity just a little bit as well. Cool. So that's, you know, the lights are on. I wouldn't try to do this if those lights were off, by the way. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. It's like the lights were on. I'm just making them like stand out and look a little bit cooler in Photoshop. You know, so if you want lights on in a photo, turn your lights on in real life, and then you can make them stand out like that, which is fun. But don't try to turn a light that's off and make it on. That's a lot harder. I'm not saying it cannot be done, but it is most definitely a lot harder. Now, when I added those lights, this like little area in the hood kind of bothered me. Just that black gap, like if you're zoomed out, kind of just like grabs my eye, right? So what I want to do is I want to turn these layers off, okay? All these light layers off. And I want to take care of that under these light layers. And the reason I'm doing it under, I'm just grabbing a clone stamp tool, by the way, is because I want these light layers to be on top of anything that we've got here. I don't want to do clone stamping that includes the effects from the light layers. And the reason is because if I do clone stamp, you know, from layers that include all these other effects there, and if I decide to change those effects, I have to then change this as well. So this is just kind of like helping me to be, you know, it's going to help just save a little bit of time. All right, and that's just going to kind of come down and, you know, connect on down to there. Bonk. You know, why not change the design a little bit? Cool. As long as it's, you know, doesn't like bother you, it's like doesn't really, whatever. In my opinion, this doesn't matter that I changed that. Someone out there probably would never do this, but I don't really care. It's just because it was getting in my way of seeing the photo how I wanted to see it. You know what I mean? It's just like that, like the dark black speck there was just bugging me. So now it doesn't bug me. Okay, cool. So we've got that. The headlights taken care of. I almost had head lice. Not quite head lice. Okay. Let's work on the color of the car as well now. Okay, so I'm going to hit Command G. Sorry, new layer. Command G on that, and we'll just call this car color. There we are. And in here you can create a curves adjustment layer. And I'm just going to pull like, you know, a little bit more blue and a little bit more green in there. Just kind of like give it a little bit more of that nice color. There we go. And I'm going to hit Command I on my layer mask there. And then we're just going to paint with our brush tool. There we go. So, you know, you'll notice I'm not doing anything crazy here. It's just like a little bit more of that nice color. All right, and it's really going to come through down here. Again, in our shadow areas, like down here, I don't need to paint it too visible down there as well. All right, so there's the before and the after. Just going to give us a little bit more of that, you know, just a little bit more color in there. Make it a little bit more dynamic, which I like. All right, sharpness. We're going to add. Oh, look, that's a cloud. Remember I drew that earlier, and we did add clouds, which is cool. All right, our sign up there. Let's go ahead and take care of our sign. We did the car coloring. New layer, and you can take care of the sign in a number of ways. Group that. Okay, let's try the first way. I'm going to go to select and down here to color range, and let's just select like the colors that are here in the sign. Let's bring up our fuzziness there. Okay, there we go. That looks pretty good. So we've selected those colors out, and then you can use these in a number of ways. Like I could actually grab like a curves adjustment layer. I'll show you how to do this. A curves adjustment layer, and then we could actually like pull in some more reds, and it would add them to those areas. So reds, and let's pull down the blues. So it's actually adding them. You can see the sky or the sign there. Let's just add a bit more red. There we go. Now hold Alt or Option, look at our layer mask. It's visible everywhere. We really don't want that again. So what we're going to be doing is painting black, you know, over top of these areas here, especially over our subject. He looked really weird, you know, but there we can see this is, especially up here, is a little bit, you know, we do have more color in there, which is really nice. The next thing we can do is I can basically do the same thing. Now I want to grab a curves adjustment layer. We're going to bring up our exposure, the RGB. I'm going to bring up the reds, and I'm going to pull down our blues. Okay. I'm going to hold Alt or Option and click and drag this layer mask from this layer to that one. So we got the same thing kind of going on here, right? But now this time on this layer mask, I'm going to go to Filter, and we're going to go to Blur and Gaussian Blur. And I'm going to give this a bit of a blur. All right, there we go. Maybe a little bit less. It's going to kind of make it look like that sign is like glowing, like it has that nice like glow to it. I'm going to hit Command J. Let's just make another one of those. And let's just blur this one even more. Because remember, we selected out that sign, right? I'm not going to change the exposure so much on this one, but I do want, you know, I want that red to like really start to come through. All right, so it's just kind of like showing up that little bit of that blur right there. And if you want to, you can just go in here with your paintbrush tool. You don't have to use blurs in selection. You could just like actually paint this in. It's just going to be a little bit more, it's going to look a little bit more natural if you don't just use a paintbrush tool, but whatever you want to do, you can totally, it's your world. You can do whatever you want. There we go. That looks good. So there's our sign. I can just put a layer mask on the entire group there. Like, I think this made it a little bit too red there on a building. Yeah, and they're in the trees and stuff too, so. Cool. So now we've got a nice, nice sign there. We'll lower the opacity on that one. Very cool. So that's drawing some nice attention to the sign. Let's just look at our before and after real quick. I love doing this for a couple reasons. First, it makes me feel like I did a lot in Photoshop, which makes me proud. Second reason is sometimes you're able to see some things that, you know, you can, you know, not see before. So let's try it. I'm going to hold Alt or Option and click on their before. And here we are with the after. So quite a bit of work we've already done. And I think you can agree, the image looks way better. Very, very cool. All right, let's see what else we've planned out. So we've got some clouds, some sharpness up, which we'll do that, and desaturate, that's the D-E-S-A-T, it's for desaturate. That's kind of the plan. So most of the plan is already done. The only things that are really left are our color work. So let's just close our plan out, create a new layer, and I'm going to group that, and we're going to just call this color. Great. And yeah, I'm excited. This is going to be fun. Okay, so we're going to start this off. We're going to be doing quite a bit of color toning in this image, and then working with saturation and hue, and, you know, just quite a bit. All right, first of all, let's make our sky a little bit darker. So what I'm going to do is you can use either like select color range or curves or really anything you want to do. Let's try I'm just going to go to, yeah, let's go to select and then down here to color range. We'll select out our sky. All right, that's, you know, all those nice blues. All right, and we're gonna bring our curves just down just a little bit more. Okay, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring the saturation of our sky down a little bit as well. It's going to help to draw more attention to Option Command G. By the way, we'll clip that to just the sky. All right, now what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of bring down the brightness from the top down as well. All right, and that's just going to make it look like, you know, it gets a little bit later in the little bit later at night there. All right. Yeah, that looks pretty good. When I'm doing this, I'm also looking at this opposed to all the, you know, everything that I've got going on. Like these lights here, although that doesn't look bad, it needs some more blur on it because it doesn't look very natural. So that's another, really great reason for working, non-destructive like this is I can go back and edit these, lights, 10 or 15 minutes after I make them. And, that's not a problem at all. All right, that looks really good. Let's just go ahead and desaturate just about everything here. Just a hair. All right, I'm going to bring a curves adjustment layer, and we're going to bring up brightness just a little bit, and then I'm going to warm up the center of the image. So we're going to pull a little bit of red and some yellow. There we go. And we're going to warm this up. We've got a warm sign, warm light on him, and some warm headlights. All right, so to do that, what you want to do, I'll just step back. So go ahead and make your curves adjustment layer like you want. Make a selection, and then we've got a white layer mask. So you have to hit Command I. It's going to invert that layer mask, right? It's going to invert the color that's on your layer mask. But this is actually the invert of what we want. So we deselect by hitting Command D, and then hit Command I again, and it's going to invert the entire image, or the entire layer mask rather. All right, now we're just going to go to Filter, Blur, and to Gaussian Blur. Raise that up just a little bit. So here in the center, we've just got a little bit brighter and a little bit warmer, and we can just use a nice soft brush on our layer mask. Let's say we want it visible where the headlights are too. So that's my head. I made it visible where the headlights are too. That's our layer mask there. All right, looking pretty good. Let's grab our hue saturation, and I'm going to click on our blues, and then I'm going to use this eyedropper here to actually select out these blues that are right here, and I'm going to pull our saturation down. There we go. Just going to pull the saturation down in the sky. I can still use my layer mask because this is visible. I've got some blues here in the car as well. So I'm going to use my layer mask on our hue saturation layer to paint black where my car is. So basically I'm just making sure that continues to be saturated. So my sky is getting a little saturated, but my car is not. Okay, that's looking good too. Next thing I want to do, let's just grab a levels adjustment layer, and what we're going to do is I'm going to pull from our blue channel. We're just going to pull some blues into our shadows, something just like that. It's going to kind of bring the whole image together when we do that. And then we're going to pull some yellows into our highlights. All right, and see how far we can push that. There we go. I want this to kind of like have that like little bit of an old feel to it. Pull some reds in there as well. All right, so this kind of color work is going to just allow it to like have that little bit of an old feel. All right, on our new layer, I'm just going to grab like a nice bright color like this and just kind of like paint with a giant paintbrush here. It's just going to be like a big flare that's kind of hitting our lens there. Why not? Just to have something big like that. You lower the opacity pretty easy by hitting V and the number like 4 on the keyboard. So we've got like a big flare going on there. There's little stuff like that you can do. It's just having fun really with it. There's no real rules, All right, we're definitely looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and bring up the reds in here just a little bit. So we'll go to curves, bring up our red channel, and we'll just pull that up just a little bit there. Okay, hit Command I to invert that layer mask, and then I'm just kind of painting it on those. And then we're going to put a little bit of blur there to kind of blur that out to make it look like it's coming through the sky. All right, very cool. So let's just look at this color layer before and the after. So there's the before and there's the after. So you can see we did really like a lot with this image in a very short amount of time. A lot of it was getting the prep work and everything like that, right? But then what we did after that is went ahead and get all of our color work And it's just really amazing what you can do in a short period of time, you know, with using our colors and things like that. All these other things are also really important, you know, but that's definitely going to be a big part of it. All right, the next couple things we're going to do here in our plan, we talked about sharpening. So we are going to sharpen, and then we're going to be pretty much done. So we're going to sharpen this area. I'm going to make a new layer and hit Shift Option Command E, which makes it stamp visible. Okay, and then we're going to hit Shift Command U, and I'm going to do this 3 times. This image, I think, by the way, looks pretty cool in black and white too. We're going to do this 3 times. So I'm going to hit Command J twice. So I've got 3 different layers. Basically, each one of these is going to serve a slightly different purpose. The first one we're going to change to soft light, and then I'm going to go to filter, other, and over here to high pass. We're going to choose a relatively large radius here, and that's just going to kind of give us some, you know, some nice contrast here in the image. So this is not so much sharpening. This is almost like a high-level dodge and burn. There we go. And let's just look at that. All right. I'm trying to find a nice zoom here to look at it. There we go. And that looks pretty good there. With these, what you can do is use your layer masks. So I can hold Alt or Option, click on my layer mask to make a black layer mask. And then I can just paint white, like, you know, here in his face and his jacket and shoes and, you know, things like that, and details up there. Like those are all nice details. Like we want those to kind of stand out. I don't care about all the other stuff. So, you know, making those kind of stand out just a bit more. There's shoes. Okay. Let's change this layer from normal down to linear light now. This is going to be for some smaller details. So again, we're going to go to high pass, filter, other, and down to high pass, and hit OK. And this is going to be basically about the same place. So we're going to hold Alt or Option and click on a layer mask there, and then paint white right over here. There we go. Let's paint that visible there. All right, so he's, you know, we can really see he's starting to stand off. All right, and then we're just going to change this one from normal to overlay, and this is going to be just general for everything, just a little bit more sharpening on everything. All right, there we go. Okay, so we'll group the 3 of those and just double click here, call this sharp. So let's look at the before and after with that. You can see pretty big difference. We're definitely looking like right at our subject now. He's blending in just a little bit much with our background here, but now not at all. We know who we're supposed to be looking at, yeah, that looks really good. Let's put a layer mask. I'm just going to paint black on this wheel just a little bit. I'm okay with it getting a little bit less sharp. Definitely very, very cool. All right. And yeah, that's pretty much the end of the image, guys. Thank you so much. Let's just take a look again right quick. I'm going to hold Alt or Option and click on this eyeball here. And we're going to look at the before and the after. So we did a whole lot of stuff. Remember the exposure? We pulled in detail from our shadows and from our highlights. We brought in a complete sky and replaced the sky. Got rid of a lot of details, changed our lighting quite a bit, worked with color, replaced this, whatever that is, license plate, and really quite a bit of stuff. And we went for something that was already a solid image, just a little bit distracting in some places. Got rid of, changed the curve and things like that, and ended up with this, which is really quite a bit better. So now you'll be able to do the same thing with your images, and I just couldn't talk right then. All right, now you'll be able to do the same thing with your images, guys, and I can't wait to see them. Please post them on Phlearn.com in any of our comments or on our Facebook page, and I would love to see them. Thanks so much for picking up this Phlearn Pro tutorial. Hope you had a great time learning. I'll Phlearn you guys later. Bye, everyone.